My name is Lena Carter. I am 30 years old, a marketing executive living in Philadelphia. For most of my life, I believed I understood disappointment, but nothing prepared me for the day my father refused to walk me down the aisle. It happened just weeks before my wedding, when my sister Bianca announced she was hosting a grand celebration for her career milestone on the exact same date. A date she had known about for months. In that moment, the air seemed to leave the room. I could already feel the empty space where my father should have been beside me, and a quiet dread began to grow in my chest. I did not know it then, but what would follow would rip open old wounds, expose years of lies, and force me to decide who truly belonged in my life. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone you love choose another person over you? Share your story in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe so you can follow every twist of what happened next. That afternoon, the sky was a flat, winter gray. Benjamin, my fiancé, was in the kitchen making coffee, and the smell of dark roast filled the apartment. I was curled up on the couch, going over our wedding seating chart on my laptop. June 15th was circled in my mind like a bright promise. The venue was booked, the invitations were sent, and most of the details were falling into place. When my phone lit up with Bianca's name, I almost didn't answer. My sister's calls were unpredictable, sometimes casual, other times barbed with little remarks meant to make me feel small. But I thought maybe, just maybe, she was calling to talk about the wedding. "Lena," she said, her tone syrupy and sweet, "I wanted to tell you before you see it online." I straightened in my seat. "Tell me what?" "My firm is hosting a huge party to celebrate me hitting my sales goal. It's going to be amazing. And it's on June 15th. My fingers froze above the keyboard. The date echoed in my mind. June 15th. "That's my wedding day, Bianca." She made a small sound somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Oh right. But this isn't really a conflict. My party's at 11 in the morning at the country club. Plenty of time for Dad to come to both." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "The country club is 2 hours away from my venue. You know that." Her voice didn't change. "Then he'll just drive over after mine. It'll work out." There was a heavy silence between us, the kind where words become heavier than they should be. I could feel my pulse quicken, that familiar sensation of my sister's subtle victories, always wrapped in casual tones and plausible excuses. "You got the save the date card months ago," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "You knew the date." "Did I?" she replied, feigning surprise. "Maybe it slipped my mind. Besides, this is a big achievement for me. Dad's really proud, and I'm sure he'll make it to your wedding too." But I knew the truth. The minute she said his name, I could already picture the choice he would make. After we hung up, I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. Benjamin came over with 2 mugs of coffee and a gentle smile. "What happened?" I told him. Every word, every tone. The way she'd made it sound inevitable that my father would be at her side that morning, not mine. Benjamin set his coffee down, his jaw tightening. "We'll talk to him. Maybe he doesn't realize how much this matters." "He realizes," I said quietly. "He just might not choose me. My father and I had always been close when I was little. Before my mother died, he was the one who built my school projects with me, taught me how to ride a bike, and made pancakes on Sunday mornings. But after her death, something shifted. He withdrew into work, and Bianca stepped forward, claiming space in his life that she hadn't had before. It was subtle at first, her running errands for him, cooking dinner, answering the phone when I called. But over time, she became the gatekeeper, the filter through which every word passed. Still, I had believed, perhaps foolishly, that my wedding day would be different. I picked up my phone and called him. "Dad," I began, trying to sound light. "Did you know Bianca's having her party on my wedding day?" "Yes," he said after a pause. "She mentioned it. It's unfortunate timing, but these work events can be hard to move. She's worked very hard for this." I gripped the phone tighter. "But you're walking me down the aisle." "I'll make it work," he replied. "I'll go to the start of her event, then drive to yours. We might have to move your ceremony an hour later to be safe. My breath caught. Move my wedding for her party. It's just an idea, he said. I don't want you to stress. But I was already spiraling inside. The way he said it, so casually, as though the shift would be nothing more than adjusting a meeting time. He didn't seem to realize that it was not just about logistics, it was about the statement it would make, the choice it represented. I ended the call politely, forcing my voice to remain steady. As soon as the line went dead, the quiet of my apartment pressed against me. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the clock. I looked at my ring. The diamond caught the light from the window, and for the first time since Benjamin had placed it on my finger, it felt heavier than it should. Memories of past moments flickered in my mind. My art scholarship ceremony he'd missed because Bianca told him I didn't want him there. My college graduation dinner he'd forgotten until Benjamin's parents reminded him. Every time there had been an excuse. Every time I had told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. But now this was my wedding. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I closed my laptop, set it on the coffee table, and stared out the window at the gray sky. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared, a sharp, jarring sound that felt like it belonged in my chest. Benjamin sat beside me, his arms sliding around my shoulders. We'll figure this out, he murmured. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew this was only the beginning. The following week, the air in Philadelphia felt colder than it should for early spring. Maybe it was the season, or maybe it was me, walking through the city with a knot in my stomach, knowing that a conversation with my father loomed over me like a storm cloud. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be him, telling me he had decided. But days passed with nothing. Only short, polite texts about the weather or a news article he thought I'd like. Not a word about the wedding or Bianca's party. On Friday, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I called him during my lunch break, sitting in the corner booth of a small cafe near my office. Dad, have you thought any more about June 15th? I asked, keeping my voice steady. There was a long pause, then his voice came, hesitant. I have. And I think it might be too tight for me to get from Bianca's event to your ceremony in time for the start. I gripped my coffee cup so tightly that the cardboard sleeve bent under my fingers. Too tight. You promised to walk me down the aisle. Lena, he said, his tone almost weary. This is important for her career. She's worked years for this moment. His words hit me harder than I expected. And my wedding isn't important. Of course it is. But you have other options. Benjamin's father could walk you down, or a close friend's dad. I'll still make it to the reception. The cafe seemed to close in around me. Cups clinking, laughter from the next table, the hiss of the espresso machine. It all blurred into a distant hum. Someone else, I repeated quietly. As if it's an interchangeable task. As if any stranger could take your place. He didn't respond. I ended the call quickly, my voice barely holding together. My hands trembled as I set the phone down on the table. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. When I got home that night, Benjamin was waiting, leaning against the kitchen counter. One look at my face and his expression hardened. He's not coming, is he? I shook my head. He's choosing her. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me. Then we find someone else. Someone who actually wants to be there. The words stayed with me all weekend, echoing in my mind. Someone who actually wants to be there. 2 days later, my phone rang again, this time with Laura's name, Benjamin's mother. Her voice was warm but edged with concern. Lena, Benjamin told me what happened. Sweetheart, I cannot believe your father would do this to you. I told her everything. The party, the distance between venues, the excuses. By the end, my voice was tight and my throat burned. Listen to me, Laura said firmly. This is your day. Yours and Benjamin's. If your father can't see that, then you need someone who can. Someone who will be proud to walk beside you. I hesitated. But who? There was a pause and then she said, There's something you should know about Jack. Jack Morgan, Benjamin's uncle, was a retired English professor with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a kindness that felt genuine. He had always taken an interest in my work, my art, my life. Years ago, Laura continued, when I married Henry, my own father refused to walk me down the aisle because it was my second wedding. Jack stepped in without hesitation. He told me, "You deserve to be given away by someone who celebrates your happiness." The image lodged in my mind. Jack offering his arm to Laura on her wedding day, choosing to stand in for a role someone else had abandoned. The next morning I sat at my desk at work, staring at my phone. The cursor blinked on an unsent text to Jack. Finally, I erased it, deciding this wasn't a request to make over a screen. I called him instead. "Jack, would you be free to meet for coffee tomorrow?" "For you." "Of course," he said without hesitation. The following afternoon, I found him already seated at a small table in a quiet bookstore cafe, a stack of books beside him and 2 coffees waiting. He smiled when he saw me. "Vanilla latte with an extra shot, right?" The fact that he remembered such a detail made my throat tighten. We talked for a few minutes about nothing in particular. Books, the weather, a recent exhibit at the art museum. But eventually I gathered my courage. "Jack," I began, "my father has decided not to walk me down the aisle." His expression softened. "I'm sorry, Lena. I know that must hurt deeply. Laura told me what you did for her. And I was wondering if you might consider doing the same for me." He was silent for a moment, his eyes glistening. "Lena, I would be honored. Truly honored. Are you certain this is what you want?" "More certain than I've been about anything in a long time," I said. "You've shown me more care than my father has in years. I can't imagine anyone else I'd rather have by my side." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Then it would be one of the greatest honors of my life." For the first time in weeks, the heaviness in my chest eased. But as I left the cafe, I couldn't shake the thought that this choice, my choice, would not go unnoticed by my father. And I had no idea just how much that would matter in the days to come. The week before the wedding arrived in a blur of checklists and last-minute details. The florist confirmed the bouquets, the hotel finalized the room blocks, and the seating chart finally came together after 2 stubborn guests switched RSVPs. I told myself to stay focused on the joy, to let the decision about who would walk me down the aisle settle into my bones as the right one. But beneath the layers of planning, there was a quiet ache I couldn't shake. Every time someone asked about my father, I would give a short, polite answer, then quickly change the subject. 3 days before the ceremony, I called him anyway, more out of duty than hope. "Dad, just checking. Are you still coming to the reception?" His voice was flat, almost distracted. "Yes, probably around 7:30 or 8, after Bianca's event wraps up." I swallowed. "I also wanted you to know. I've asked Jack Morgan to walk me down the aisle." There was a pause, then a clipped, "Who?" "Benjamin's uncle. He's been so supportive through all of this." It felt right. "Well," he said, his tone unreadable, "someone has to do it if I can't be there." When the call ended, I sat in silence, the phone heavy in my hand. There was no anger in his voice, no sadness, just a dismissiveness that stung more than if he had shouted. The night before the wedding, we held a small rehearsal dinner at a restaurant near the venue. Jack arrived in a charcoal suit, looking distinguished, his calm presence filling the room without demanding attention. During dinner, he stood to make a toast. "To Lena and Benjamin," he said, raising his glass. "True love is not just about finding the right person. It's about building a family, whether by blood or by choice, that celebrates you, supports you, and stands beside you. Tomorrow, I have the honor of walking Lena toward a new chapter in her life, and it's a privilege I'll never forget." His words caught in my throat. Around the table, I saw eyes glistening. Later that night, when I checked my phone one last time, I saw Bianca's latest social media post. It was a photo of her apartment, decorated with gold balloons and streamers. The caption read, "Ready for tomorrow's big day." Tagged were only a handful of friends and coworkers. It didn't look like a corporate celebration. It didn't even look like something her company had arranged. It was small, personal, and deliberately scheduled to collide with my wedding. The morning of the ceremony, sunlight poured through the hotel suite windows. My bridesmaids bustled around me, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The hairstylist pinned curls into place. The makeup artist brushed soft tones onto my cheeks. At noon, a knock came at the door. Sophia, my maid of honor, opened it, and there stood Jack, immaculate in his tuxedo, holding a small wrapped box. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said with a smile. "I just wanted to give Lena something before the ceremony." The bridesmaids drifted into the bedroom area, giving us a moment alone. Jack handed me the box. Inside was a delicate vintage handkerchief, edged with lace and embroidered with tiny blue flowers. "Something old, something blue," he said softly. "It belonged to my mother. She carried it on her wedding day in 1930. I thought you might want to carry it too." My throat tightened. "It's beautiful, Jack. Thank you. There's one more thing," he added, pulling a small velvet pouch from his pocket. "This is from Laura. She wanted it to be a surprise." Inside was a silver bracelet with a single charm, a paintbrush crossed with a pen. "She remembered you telling her how much you loved painting and writing when you were a child," Jack explained. "She thought you might like a reminder of that on your wedding day." The weight of those two gifts, given without obligation, without calculation, was almost too much to bear. In that moment, I realized that what Jack and Laura had given me was more than objects. They had given me the kind of care my own father couldn't, or wouldn't, offer. As Jack left to take his place in the lobby, I fastened the bracelet around my wrist and tucked the handkerchief into my bouquet. The day felt lighter somehow, even with the shadow of my father's absence hanging over it. But that shadow, it wasn't finished with me yet. By 3:30, the hotel suite had transformed from a flurry of movement into a still, expectant calm. My dress was on, a fitted lace gown with delicate beading that shimmered faintly in the afternoon light. The skirt fell in soft layers around me, the sweetheart neckline framing the pearl earrings my mother had left me. Laura's bracelet hugged my wrist. Jack's handkerchief was tucked safely into the bouquet of white roses and eucalyptus resting in my hands. A knock came at the door. It was Laura. Her eyes widened as soon as she saw me. "Oh, Lena," she breathed, her voice catching. "You're absolutely stunning." She stepped forward to hug me, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "Jack is waiting in the lobby whenever you're ready." My bridesmaids lined up behind me as we made our way down the carpeted hallway, the muted hum of conversation from the reception area growing louder with each step. The glass doors to the garden terrace revealed rows of white chairs filled with guests, their heads turning as they spotted us. In the small anteroom just before the terrace, Jack stood waiting. His posture was straight, his expression calm, but when he saw me, something in his face softened. Pride, warmth, quiet, steady joy. "Are you ready?" he asked. I nodded, my throat tight. He offered his arm and I took it. The music began, Canon in D, played by the string quartet outside. The doors opened. As we stepped into the sunlight, the air felt warmer than it had all day. I could see Benjamin at the altar, his eyes fixed on me, a smile tugging at his mouth as if he couldn't contain it. For a brief moment, the ache of my father's absence returned, sharp and real. But then I felt Jack's steady presence beside me, his grip firm but gentle, grounding me with every step. The guests stood. I caught glimpses of faces, friends from college, co-workers, distant relatives, smiling, whispering, holding up phones. The floral arch framed Benjamin in soft whites and greens, the sunlight catching in his hair. Halfway down the aisle, I realized my hands had stopped trembling. The sadness wasn't gone, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. Gratitude swelled in its place. Gratitude for the man walking beside me, for the man waiting ahead, for the family I was choosing. When we reached the altar, Jack gave my hand a gentle squeeze before placing it in Benjamin's. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "Always," Benjamin replied. The ceremony began. Our vows, written in our own words, wove together promises of honesty, patience, and choosing each other every day. As we exchanged rings, I felt the crowd fade into a soft blur, the world narrowing to the space between us. When the officiant finally said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the applause broke like a wave, wrapping around us in warmth. The cocktail hour flowed into dinner, laughter echoing off the ballroom walls. Benjamin's father gave a toast that welcomed me to their family with a sincerity that brought tears to my eyes. Jack's speech followed. He spoke of watching our relationship grow, of the privilege it was to walk beside me, and of the belief that true family is measured by presence, not by blood. I glanced toward the entrance more than once, half hoping, half dreading to see my father walk in. By 8:30 it was clear he wasn't coming. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was fine. And then, just as the band started our first dance song, the ballroom doors opened. My father stepped inside. His suit looked hastily thrown on, his tie slightly askew. Benjamin saw him too and squeezed my hand. "Do you want me to go to him?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "I need to hear what he's going to say." But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to learn next. He spotted me almost immediately, moving through the room with an awkward stiffness, clutching a small gift bag. His eyes darted around at the lingering clusters of guests, the remnants of the cake, the last few plates of dessert. "Congratulations," he said when he reached me, leaning in for a brief hug that felt more like a formality than an embrace. "Sorry I'm late. Bianca's thing ran longer than expected." His casual tone made my chest tighten. "I'm glad you could make it for the last hour of the reception," I replied, my voice level. He glanced toward the tables, nodding absently. "Looks like it was a nice wedding." "It was beautiful," I said. "Perfect, actually." He handed me the gift bag. Inside was a set of crystal wine glasses. "This is from Bianca and me," he said. "Would you like a drink? The bar's still open." We walked toward the bar together, and after a moment he asked, "So, who ended up walking you down the aisle?" "Jack Morgan," I said simply. "The older gentleman in the navy tuxedo. The one who gave that toast." "Yes," I said. "He's not a stranger to me. He's been part of Benjamin's family for years, and he's shown me more interest in my life than you have in a long time." His face flushed. "That's not fair, Lena. I've always supported you." Before I could respond, someone stepped up beside me. It was Thomas, my cousin, my mother's nephew. "Uncle Harold." Thomas greeted him, then turned to me. "Lena, can we talk for a moment?" His tone was serious, almost urgent. We stepped a few feet away from my father, and Thomas lowered his voice. "I stopped by Bianca's event before coming here. Lena, it wasn't what she told you. It wasn't a work function at all. Maybe 15 people were there, mostly her gym friends and a couple of co-workers. No speeches, no company banners. Nothing." My stomach dropped. "So she lied." "That's not all," he said, pulling out his phone. "I overheard her talking to your dad earlier today. She's been telling him for months that you didn't really want him at the wedding. That you only asked him to walk you down the aisle out of obligation." "What?" Thomas unlocked his phone and showed me a string of messages from Bianca. In them, she openly admitted to scheduling her party on the same day as my wedding just to see who my father would choose. Anger rose in my chest, sharp and sudden. "She's been doing this for years," I whispered. "Feeding him lies about me." Before Thomas could reply, my father approached. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing between us. Thomas handed him the phone. "Read it," he said simply. My father's eyes moved over the messages, his face growing pale. This can't be right," he muttered. "Bianca wouldn't." But the truth was right there, black letters on a glowing screen. I watched the realization sink into him, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of it. And in that moment, the wedding day I thought had already given me all its shocks delivered the one that would stay with me forever. My father's eyes stayed fixed on Thomas's phone, as if looking away would make the words disappear. His lips moved slightly, reading the messages under his breath. Each line seemed to cut deeper into whatever certainty he had carried about Bianca's loyalty. "This isn't, she told me you didn't want me there," he said finally, his voice low and uneven. "She said you thought it would be embarrassing to have me walk you down the aisle because we weren't close anymore." "That's not true," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady even as it shook inside me. "I wanted you there more than anyone. I've always wanted you there. But she made sure you believed otherwise." He looked at me then, really looked. His expression caught somewhere between disbelief and shame. I need to talk to her." "Not now," I said firmly. "This is my wedding. Not the place for a shouting match." But he was already pulling out his phone, stepping toward the ballroom doors. I could hear his voice from the hall, tight with anger. "Bianca, we need to talk now. Don't hang up on me." As he paced outside, I felt a familiar, steady presence at my side. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. I nodded, though the knot in my chest said otherwise. He knows now. She admitted it in those messages. Jack's gaze followed my father through the glass doors. Truth has a way of finding its moment, even if it comes later than it should. A minute later my father reappeared, his face flushed. "She hung up on me," he said flatly. "I'm going to her apartment." "Dad, please," I said. "This can wait until tomorrow." "No," he insisted. "If she's been lying to me all these years." He stopped, looking over my shoulder at Jack, as if suddenly remembering the man who had taken his place. "So you replaced me with him?" he demanded. Jack stepped forward, calm but firm. "Mr. Carter, I didn't replace you. I stepped in when you stepped out. Lena deserved someone who would be there for her, without hesitation." My father's jaw tightened. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Jack replied evenly. Being a father means showing up, not just when it's convenient, but when it matters most. The words seemed to hit my father like a physical blow. His gaze flicked between us, me standing beside Jack, Jack's hand steady on my shoulder, the guests beyond us still laughing and clinking glasses, unaware of the fracture playing out in the corner of the room. He stepped back, almost as if retreating from the weight of it all. "I need to go," he said again, and without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked out of the ballroom. The doors swung closed behind him, leaving only the fading sound of the band and the soft murmur of guests. Jack's hand stayed on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry his choices," he said gently. But as I looked toward the door where my father had just left, I knew his absence tonight wasn't the last I'd hear of this. After my father left, the air around me felt heavier. The sparkle of the reception lights, the hum of conversation, even the music seemed muted, as though the ballroom itself was holding its breath. Benjamin found me standing near the corner, his brows knitting in concern the moment our eyes met. "What happened?" I told him in as few words as possible. The messages, the lies, the confrontation. His jaw tightened with each sentence, his hand finding mine and holding it firmly. "Then let's end the night on our terms," he said softly. "We've got the sparkler send-off in half an hour. After that, it's just you and me." I nodded, grateful for his steadiness, but inside, my mind kept replaying the look on my father's face as he read those messages. A mix of disbelief, betrayal, and something else. Something I couldn't quite name. The reception moved on around us. The band played upbeat songs, guests laughed over drinks, and the photographer corralled the bridal party for a few last group shots. I smiled where I needed to, thanked people for coming, and accepted compliments on the ceremony. But under it all, the knot in my chest never loosened. Just before the sparkler send-off, Laura approached me, slipping her arm around my shoulders. "Don't let him take this night from you," she whispered. "Remember the people who showed up, not the ones who didn't." I nodded again, blinking away the moisture threatening my eyes. We lined up outside the hotel's garden entrance. Guests lit their sparklers, holding them high to form a glittering tunnel of gold. As Benjamin and I walked through, the air shimmered with light and cheers. For those few seconds it felt like the wedding I had dreamed of, a celebration of love untouched by anyone's spite. The car was waiting just beyond the gates. Benjamin helped me in, the tulle of my dress filling the back seat. As we pulled away, the hotel lights receded into the distance, and for the first time that night, the noise faded completely. But silence didn't mean peace. The moment we reached the honeymoon suite, my phone buzzed. A voicemail notification from my father. I didn't listen. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and tried to focus on Benjamin, on the life we had just begun together. Still, as we toasted with champagne and the city lights flickered beyond the window, I couldn't stop wondering what his message said, or if it was the beginning of something even more complicated than I'd imagined. We flew out the next morning, leaving the gray skyline of Philadelphia behind for the sunlit streets and deep blue waters of Greece. I told myself I was leaving the drama behind too, that for 2 weeks I would think only of Benjamin and the life we were building. Our days were filled with winding cobblestone paths, the scent of grilled seafood drifting from small tavernas, and the gentle hush of the sea against the shore. At night, we lingered over long dinners under strings of warm lights, laughing about nothing and everything. But my phone remained dark. I had turned off notifications from my father and Bianca before we boarded the plane. Still, in quiet moments, walking back to our villa after midnight, watching the waves from our balcony, I would think about that voicemail. When our plane touched down back home, the weight of real life settled back over me. The moment we stepped into our apartment, I plugged my phone into the charger and saw them. 5 voicemails, all from my father. The first was polite, almost formal. I hope you're enjoying your honeymoon. Call me when you can. The second was shorter, a little strained. We need to talk. I've been thinking about everything. By the third, his voice was tight, almost raw. Lena, I need you to hear me out. I think I've been wrong about a lot of things. The fourth came 2 days before we flew home. Please, I don't know if you're listening to these, but you were right about Bianca. I confronted her. She denied it at first, but when I showed her Thomas's messages, she admitted it. She's been manipulating me for years. Telling me you didn't want me around, that you thought I was a burden. I can't believe I fell for it. I'm so sorry. I should have been there for you. And then the last one left just 3 days ago. I know I can't undo what happened. I know missing your wedding is unforgivable. But I hope someday you'll let me try to make it right. I set the phone down slowly, my fingers trembling. There was nothing from Bianca. No calls. No apologies. Only a single curt email in my inbox. Taking some time away from family drama. Traveling for work indefinitely. Benjamin came to sit beside me on the couch. What did he say? I told him every word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to call him back? He asked finally. I stared at the phone, the little red voicemail icon still glowing on the screen. Not yet, I said. I don't know what I want this to be now. If I want it at all. And in that moment, I realized that the hardest choice wasn't about whether I could forgive him. It was about whether I could trust him to show up if I did. That weeks passed in a blur of thank you notes, returning borrowed decor to friends, and trying to settle into the rhythm of married life. Benjamin and I fell back into our usual routines. Me heading into the marketing firm's downtown office, him juggling projects at the engineering consultancy. But every so often, I would feel the tug of something unresolved, like a loose thread I couldn't quite ignore. Jack called most Sunday evenings. We would talk about books we were reading, new art exhibits in the city, or whatever documentary he'd just finished. Sometimes the conversation drifted toward family. Once, in his quiet, measured way, he said, "Forgiveness isn't about excusing the harm. It's about deciding you don't want to carry the weight of it anymore." A month after we returned from our honeymoon, I called my father. We agreed to meet at a small cafe halfway between Philadelphia and Allentown. I arrived first, choosing a table near the window where the weak winter sunlight spilled across the floor. My hands curled around a mug of coffee, more for something to hold than for warmth. He walked in a few minutes later, looking older than I remembered. His shoulders slightly hunched, the lines around his eyes deeper. When he spotted me, he hesitated, as if unsure I'd still be sitting there when he reached the table. "Lena," he said softly, pulling out the chair across from me. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, my voice neutral. I figured it was time we talked. For a moment, we sat in silence, the clink of cups and low hum of conversation from other tables filling the space. Finally, he exhaled. "I failed you. Completely." I let myself believe what was easiest, not what was true. I didn't let him off the hook. "You believed her because it meant you didn't have to see how much you were pulling away from me." His gaze dropped to the table. "After your mother died, I didn't know how to be what you needed. Bianca stepped in and I let her. It was easier to see her as the responsible one, the one keeping the family together. I didn't realize she was keeping me from you." The ache in my chest sharpened. "I never wanted distance, Dad. I wanted you. But every time I reached out, she was there first, twisting it into something else." He rubbed his hands over his face. "I confronted her after the wedding. She admitted it, every lie, every manipulation. She said she felt I always favored you, even when you were kids. She wanted me to herself. And now?" I asked. "She's in Miami, staying with a friend. Refuses to talk about it. I don't know if she'll come back." We talked for hours, about the past, about missed moments, about the years we couldn't get back. When it was time to leave, he said, "I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you're willing, I'd like to get to know the woman you've become." I stood, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "I need time, Dad. This isn't something we fix over coffee." He nodded, accepting the distance between us as we walked out into the cold air. But as I watched him head to his car, I wondered if maybe there was a way forward, one slow step at a time. The weeks that followed were careful ones. My father and I spoke on the phone once a week, keeping the conversations light at first. Updates about work, a new recipe he'd tried, a book he thought I might like. Over time, the calls grew longer, more personal. 3 months after that coffee meeting, he asked if I would come to dinner at his house. Bring Benjamin. And, if it's all right, I'd like to invite his parents. And Jack. The idea of my father and Jack sitting at the same table was strange, but something in his voice told me he was trying to bridge a gap he had once ignored. I agreed. When we arrived that evening, the dining table was set for 7. My father greeted us at the door with a tentative smile, shaking Jack's hand with a sincerity I hadn't expected. Over roast chicken and red wine, conversation began to flow. There were a few awkward pauses, moments where I could feel my father searching for the right words, but Jack made it easier, asking about my father's garden, sharing a story about a book he was rereading, laughing at one of Benjamin's father's dry jokes. After dinner, I passed by the living room and saw my father and Jack sitting together. "I want to thank you," my father was saying. "Walking Lena down the aisle should have been my privilege. But you did it with grace. You gave her what I didn't." Jack nodded. "She's a remarkable woman. You should be proud of her." "I am," my father said quietly. "I just wish I'd been more present to see it happen." It was the first time I believed he meant it. Vanessa never came back into the fold. She sent the occasional holiday card or short text, but she kept her distance. I stopped expecting more. 6 months after the wedding, we hosted our first Thanksgiving in our own home. The table was full, Benjamin's family, my father, cousin Thomas, and a couple of close friends. There was laughter, clinking glasses, and the kind of warmth that comes from people who choose to be there. As we went around the table sharing what we were thankful for, my father's voice broke slightly when it was his turn. "I'm thankful for second chances," he said. "And for a daughter whose forgiveness humbles me every day." When it was Jack's turn, he looked around at all of us. "I'm thankful for the reminder that family is made through love and choice, not just blood. And I'm grateful for the day I was asked to walk Lena toward her future." Later that night, after the dishes were done and the last guests had gone, I stood in the quiet of our kitchen with Benjamin's arms around me. The ache from that June day hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had shifted. My father was learning slowly how to show up. Jack's presence had not only filled the space my father left, it had created a bridge for him to return. And in the end, the family I stood with wasn't just the one I was born into, but the one I had built. Every face at that table, every voice in that room, was there because they had chosen to be. And that, I realized, was worth more than anything.